The Turkish army arrived with orders to take Dracula's son. At first, Dracula agreed to hand him over to the Turkish conqueror, hoping to avoid bloodshed, but when one of the soldiers insulted and humiliated him, Dracula's restraint shattered. In a sudden burst of fury, he killed them all. Dracula knew the consequences. By defying the order, he had provoked Mehmed, and now the Turkish conqueror would march on his kingdom, determined to destroy everything. Dracula knew his army was no match for the overwhelming power of the Turkish forces. With no other choice left, he decided to journey to Broken Tooth Mountain, seeking help from the ancient vampire who lived there. When Dracula reached Broken Tooth Mountain, the ancient vampire was shocked to see him. He warned Dracula that coming there meant certain death, but Dracula begged for help to save his family and kingdom. The ancient vampire offered him his own blood and told him to drink it. Before doing so, Dracula asked what the price would be. The vampire explained the curse. If Dracula drank the blood, he would gain unimaginable power, strength beyond any human army. But he would also develop an uncontrollable thirst for human blood. If he could resist that urge for 3 days, the curse would break and he would return to his human form. But if he failed, he would become a bloodthirsty vampire forever, and the ancient vampire would finally be freed from his own eternal curse. Dracula decided that he would control his thirst for blood, believing that 3 days would be more than enough to defeat the Turkish army. With that resolve, he drank the ancient vampire's blood and was immediately overwhelmed by unbearable pain. After some time, he regained consciousness by a riverside. A dark, powerful energy surged within him. He could feel his new abilities awakening, far beyond anything he had ever known. When Dracula returned to his fortress, he found that the Turkish army had already launched their attack. His soldiers were struggling badly, completely overwhelmed by the enemy's strength. Dracula first went to see his wife and son. Then, he reassured them, and his army, that the Turks would soon face the consequences of their actions. Saying this, Dracula rode out alone to face the massive Turkish army. With his unnatural powers, he wiped out thousands of soldiers in moments. His own army stood frozen in shock after witnessing such destruction. Dracula then turned to them and said, "Do not ask me anything about this battle. Just know this, while I stand, you will be safe." Soon, Dracula sensed that the conqueror had already sent countless more soldiers toward his kingdom. Using his dark powers, he unleashed a massive swarm of bats upon the army. At the same time, Dracula himself joined the battle, slaughtering the soldiers with his supernatural strength. However, some Turkish soldiers managed to sneak into the fortress from the rear and slaughtered the remaining warriors. They threw Dracula's wife from the fortress walls and kidnapped his son. Dracula rushed back instantly, but he was too late and failed to save her. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, Dracula drank his wife's blood, fully embracing his dark powers. At that very moment, the ancient vampire was finally freed from his eternal curse. Then Dracula transformed his remaining soldiers into vampires, feeding them his own blood. With his newly empowered army and seemingly limitless strength, he darkened the entire sky with dark clouds and unleashed a devastating attack on the Turkish forces. In the end, he rescued his son from the enemy and, in a final act of mercy, released the dark clouds, burning his own vampire army to save what remained of humanity.